What interested me today is about our personality types and how it's originate from, say, unconscious part of who we are. And once fixed, it may not be easy to change. And what I think about the personality types is also related to Carl Jung, a psychologist or psychoanalyst, whatever the term is, but he talks often about the unconscious becoming conscious, and in my view, whatever is developed in our unconscious, not to the real core of it, but as a part of our growth, we may have certain personality. Myers-Briggs has, I think, 12 different personalities, kind of reflecting to this thinking of Carl Jung. And I found my case is INPF. I think it's intuitive and intuitive and INPF, perceptive, F, feeling, or something like that. And it kind of fit, but what caused me to talk about the personality type is related to this quote that I found. It is about the sociopath. In Quora, one guy was explaining sociopaths and psychopaths are both clinically sane. They are mentally ill, but not psychotic. They are in full control of their reality and the actions they take. So that's interesting quote and remind me of Donald Trump. Not to get into that discussion, but more of reflecting myself and why I do my YouTube. Well, to say it simply, I believe we need some kind of a mirror to look at ourselves, either by characterizing the personalities and checking where you fit and what's the characteristics and how do you deal with what you have found as certain type so that you can live better. The whole idea is to live better, not to defining someone to throw into the slot and say this is so and this is so and they are not fighting or fighting because of this and we have this trouble. We can have that discussion, but as Carl Jung may have pointed, our personality may come or related to our unconscious part of how we have been developed from the younger days and implanting parents' behavior or whatever the circumstance that we develop. I'm coming from more of a Buddhist or Zen perspective when I look at it. Instead of analyzing and characterizing and categorizing and discussing all the phenomena, what is at the root is unconscious part. And if we can relate to the origin, which I view as humans, we have something very common. And if we get that understanding and know that the idea, which is be conscious of unconscious, to that level, I call it listen to your heart, what's at the core of it. Then whatever the characteristics we may have or define and talked about it may be distilled to know for each of us, not to be categorized and play the game given that category, but rather to find the source of where we are from, and therefore we can deal with it. And I talk about samadhi and get into the unconscious part and know more about ourselves. But this video is related to that quote about the sociopath. I also thought about the book Herman Hasse called Narcissus and Goldmund. So Narcissus is the behavior of narcissists. And there are two people. One is going into the path of religious belief and go straight. That's a narcissist. And Goldmund is the guy who was befriended with this narcissist, his name. And Goldmund was to go with him into cathedral or monastery and going through that path to be enlightened, let's say, or be with God, whatever the term you may choose. But when he was in the process, he met women and get attracted and wandered around. I read this book when I was 16 or 17, even 18. I read most of Herman Hesse's book, but this reminded me at the time, well, if I were to live my life, there are two options, let's say narcissist type and Goldmund type. And I thought, I'm attracted to this religious or spiritual path, but I want to know the world. Curiosity, experience, exploration. So I was much more attracted to Goldmund's approach of going into the society, even hell, to still maintain the thought of the spirituality. As far as I remember, at the end, after his traveling and going around exploration, he saw the light, kind of like a meeting Narcissus at the end. I understood that's one of the most well-written, well-received book from Herman Hesse. And without knowing that, I thought, well, I was 17 or something. I wanted to explore the world. And at age 76 now, reflecting back from Japan engineering into the business in the US and traveling around the world, yet going through Zen training and Vipassana, spiritual path, writing books, and looking back in my life, I was kind of like a Goldmund. But at the same time, my inclination to the spiritual path, the path of Narcissus or into spirituality remained. From the age 30s, I got into Zen and Buddhism and Christianity and others. And that is my relationship to that narcissistic tendency and Goldmund tendency kind of mixed together and merged together to who I am. I feel I'm bouncing back and forth, not to see the light at the end of my life, but when I was awakened in Vipassana at the age of 52, that was my light. And still, going back to the world, I said, after studying and confirming what I found in unconscious is thy will be done, the laws of the universe manifesting. And I felt, I touched that, I grabbed that, I felt that ecstasy of blissfulness and even awakening, you may call. And having done research and confirmation with various books and stuff, 8 years or later, maybe 10 years, right, I had a divorce because at the time, instead of going through the path of my marriage with that relationship, I had some doubt. I decided as my son graduated from the college, or he didn't actually get graduation, but at the time, well, that's enough. I'm going to go back to the hell, to the world. It's kind of like a second round of the Goldmund kind of an idea of I want to explore further about this life, the world, And I went up and down with some relationship. And right now, as I in this little hotel and just found that quote that I mentioned about the sociopath, the notion of narcissist and others popped up, especially also related to situation in the US of Trump. Sociopath tendency, narcissistic tendency, whatever the term it is, and he may believe that what he is doing is quite right, and there's attraction to it for many. But from my point of view, that's one category, and that has such a strong influence to the society and the future. So by itself, it's another book you can write about how the people may be attracted or go against or fight against to find the destiny for all. So that's not what I meant to say, but that's part of that feeling I had when I was going through this archetypes, Jung, and this quote about sociopath, narcissism, and my own. Now, let me just summarize and connect to what I found from my path in that with the light or the spiritual path. With that experience of my awakening, whatever the term and whatever the experience is, I felt and convinced that I understood or relate to what I said, thy will be done, at the whole core of our being. Because if we get the connection to the heart, the essence, the driving force, where the energy comes from, at the root of our existence, that is powerful enough to relate to instead of dividing and differentiating us into certain personality and play the game. Because if you do that, you stay in the mind. And the mind has its own limitation. That's what I said. And therefore, to get to the unconscious part of it, as Jung says, his life was a story of being conscious of unconscious. And he wrote so many books. I read few of them, but briefly. But knowing that he also had the discussion with Daisetsu Suzuki, and I know the background of that discussion and how Daisetsu felt, the connection to the real root of unconscious is the way of Zen and Buddhism, instead of the logic and the punishment and do this, do that, categorize, that's still in the mind. So ultimately, for each of us to know or be conscious about our unconscious, what it is a major part of this equation. So let me just end this video about the wisdom. Wisdom actually comes with compassion, but in Buddhism, there are 4 types of wisdom. I've already mentioned, but it's good to reflect on it. Let me first talk about what are those 4 types that is important as the way Buddhist sees. Number 1, and this is perhaps the triggering thought that I thought about those 4 wisdom. One of the first one is called the big round mirror knowledge. So if we want to know ourselves, we want to have a mirror. A mirror describe, reflect the reality of what it is. And if we don't have a mirror, we are lost. How do we check? I use the term triangulate, not the references, what Jung said, what the archetypes, and IMPF or whatever. sociopath or not? Is there inclination me to be narcissistic or not? Am I losing empathy? So we can think about those to know who we are. But reality at the core is to meet God, so to speak, or yourself reflecting in the eyes of God. But like Meister Eckhart, the eyes you see God is the eyes that the God sees you. So that's the ultimate encounter of who you are as an individual. And maybe there's a redemption and all that stuff. Instead of waiting for you to meet God after your death, let's call it the Buddhist way, is to meet God. And you may think blasphemous, I don't know the English word, but that's one analogy I see, that the mirror we want to have, and that is the wisdom. Second, let's say, 大円鏡智, and I have to translate from Japanese, 妙観察智. And the second was the wisdom of something that you can do as you wish. Because if you know yourself, know what to do, then you choose the path that reflects to your knowledge and understanding, which may be understood as the being truthful and sincere, and coming out of the truthful self to manifest. So, as Confucius talked about, let the heart play its game and follow without violating the problem or the rules of the society. Yeah, that's one way to put it. The other way to put it is, if you die yourself, in this case, talking about the ego, and live like that, everything may work out as the nature's way. Or Taoist view of no action. Instead of your thinking and acting, let the nature to act on its own. It's kind of like thy will be done. So that's like an enlightenment from the Taoist point of view. And Chan Tzu talk about a lot, and Lao Tzu, of course. So that's the second one, of manifestation of what is right. As you discover your true self and live sincerely and truthfully, there is that wisdom that pops up. So the wisdom becomes natural to come up. The third one is Nyokan Satsuchi, which means you have the eyes of detecting of all the nuances of what is the manifestation of the laws of nature as wondrous a phenomena. Whatever God does, if I use the term God, or the law of nature to manifest, it's just the way it is. It's absolute. And if you know that absolute is manifesting in the little flowers or the bugs or anything, you and me, you see through, not through the interpretation of your mind, but directly detect the amazement, wonderful nature, the miracle of what that nature is. So that's Myokan Satsuchi. The last one is Byodo Shochi. It means, I'm translating Japanese to English. Byodo means equality. What it says is everything we have the equal, the same element in it. You may call it the Buddha nature, the spirituality manifesting in everything, not just you specifically or this person or that person. We all have that. And it's equal. So it's kind of like in nothingness is everything. Without judgment, there's equality because we are the miracle of the universe. That kind of stuff. So those are the 4 wisdoms I found that if I say I can relate to, maybe not all the time, but if we have that sense, and there I can just touch on samadhi, because to have the sense requires us to go beyond the constraint of the mind, and how you get that sense is let go of your mind, which may be very difficult because mind wants to control. But there's a limitation, bias, that may have been developed in us as a pattern, archetypes you may call it in some way, or narcissistic tendency or sociopath tendency, whatever the term is. It's just a result, but the cause of it, we all distill into the beginning of this miracle existence, the nature manifest, thy will be done, the law of nature. So ultimately, know thyself is to know that. And from that, with that process of samadhi, meditation, calm, quiet mind, no ego, no self-identity, you open up to that potentiality manifesting us as a agent. I don't know if that's the right word, us being one of them. That's awakening. And it may go away because of the habitual patterns that we developed. Archetypes may remain, sociopath or narcissistic, Goldmund type, or Narcissus type, that we may bounce around, but still have the essence, the picture, the vision, and the process of emptiness of mind, samadhi, and let the whole universe to manifest through our existence with wisdom and compassion. Well, that's the story I thought